The monitor flatlined at 2:47 a.m. Maya Chen's hands moved before her brain fully processed the sound, that horrible, endless tone that meant a child was dying. She was already sprinting down the hallway of the pediatric wing, her sneakers squeaking against linoleum worn thin by 1,000 emergencies just like this one. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Room 304. The little boy with the heart condition. 6 years old, dark curls, eyes too serious for someone who should still believe in Santa Claus. She burst through the door. The night nurse, Jennifer, stood frozen by the bed, her face pale as the sheets. The child, Luca, his chart said, lay motionless, his small chest terrifyingly still. How long? Maya demanded, already checking for a pulse. 30 seconds. Maybe 40. I came in for routine vitals and... Call the code. Now. Maya positioned. Her hands on Luca's chest, found the right spot, started compressions. Her training took over. That muscle memory built from 3 years working nights at Seattle Grace Hospital. From every pediatric emergency certification she'd pursued even when she could barely afford the fees. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted silently, precisely, feeling his ribs flex beneath her palms. So small. God, he was so small. Jennifer's voice shattered the air. Code blue, pediatrics, room 304. Code blue. The crash cart arrived. Dr. Harrison, the overnight resident, stumbling in with sleep-creased scrubs and coffee on his breath. 2 more nurses materialized behind him. Respiratory arrest? Maya said, never stopping compressions. 6-year-old male, congenital heart defect, post-surgical day 12. No pulse, no respirations. Started compressions 45 seconds ago. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Dr. Harrison took over airway management while Maya continued chest compressions. Another nurse prepped medications. Dr. Harrison, the room became controlled chaos. Everyone moving with practiced efficiency born from too many nights like this. But something was wrong. Maya felt it in her gut, that instinct she'd learned to trust even when it made no sense. The pattern didn't fit standard cardiac arrest. Luca's color was off, not the blue-gray of oxygen deprivation, but something else. Something she'd seen before in a textbook case during her advanced pediatric training. Stop, she said. No one heard her over the noise. Stop! Louder this time. Everyone stop for 5 seconds. Dr. Harrison looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Nurse Chen, we're in the middle of... Look at his neck. Maya pointed with one hand while maintaining compressions with the other. Jugular vein distension. And his chest listened to the absent breath sounds on the left side. This isn't just cardiac arrest. He's got a tension pneumothorax. His lung collapsed and it's compressing his heart. We're not going to get him back with compressions alone. The doctor's eyes widened. He grabbed his stethoscope, listened. His face went pale. Jesus Christ. She's right. He turned to the team. Get me a needle decompression kit. Now. The next 90 seconds blurred. Doctor. Harrison inserted a large bore needle between Luca's ribs. There was a hiss of escaping air as the pressure released. Maya continued compressions, counting, praying, pleading with the universe. Come on, sweetheart. Come on. Breathe. The monitor changed. One blip, then another, then a rhythm weak, thready, but there. Luca gasped. His chest rose. His eyes fluttered but didn't open. We've got him, Dr. Harrison breathed. We've got him back. Maya stepped away from the bed, her arms burning, her hands shaking with adrenaline. She'd been doing compressions for nearly 4 minutes. It felt like 4 hours. The team stabilized Luca, adjusting ventilator settings, hanging new medications, murmuring medical jargon that blended into white noise. Maya backed toward the door, suddenly aware of the sweat soaking through her scrubs. The tears she hadn't realized were streaming down her face. A little boy had stopped breathing on her watch, and she'd brought him back. Nurse Chen. She turned. Dr. Harrison stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. That was... He paused, searching for words. That was extraordinary diagnostic work. If you hadn't caught the pneumothorax, we would have lost him. How did you know? I didn't know. Maya shook her head. Something felt wrong. The presentation didn't match. I took a guess. That wasn't a guess. That was instinct backed by knowledge. He smiled, tired but genuine. Good work. Really good work. He disappeared back into the room, leaving Maya standing in the hallway, trying to catch her breath, trying to process what had just happened. She needed to document everything, needed to update the chart, needed to— Where is he? The voice came from the end of the hallway, deep, controlled. But underneath it, something that made every survival instinct in Maya's body wake up and pay attention. She turned. 3 men walked toward her with the kind of purposeful stride that screamed danger. But it was the man in the center who made her breath catch, tall easily over 6 feet. Dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from granite and violence. Expensive suit, the kind that cost more than her monthly rent. And eyes, God. His eyes so dark they were almost black, scanning the hallway like he was cataloging threats. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. This was a man who didn't ask for things. He took them. Security appeared from nowhere, 2 guards intercepting the group. "Sir, visiting hours are—" The man didn't even look at them. "Where is my son?" "Sir, you need to check in at the nurse's station. Luca Marchesi, room 304. "Where is he?" "Marchesi." Maya's stomach dropped. She knew that name. Everyone in Seattle knew that name, even if they pretended not to. The Marchesi family ran half the port operations, owned restaurants and nightclubs and shipping companies that were definitely not just shipping companies. This wasn't just a worried father. This was Dante Marchesi, head of the most powerful crime family on the West Coast, and his son had almost died on her shift. Maya stepped forward before security could escalate the situation into something ugly. "Mr. Marchesi." His attention snapped to her, those dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that felt physical. She forced herself not to step back, not to show the fear making her heart race. "I'm Maya Chen, the nurse who was with your son when—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "When his condition became critical. He's stable now. You can see him, but I need you to understand that he's on a ventilator and take me to him. Not a request. Of course. But you're—" She glanced at the 2 men flanking him, built like brick walls, with the kind of alertness that suggested concealed weapons. "Your associates will need to wait in the family lounge. Hospital policy." For a moment, she thought he'd argue. Then he gave a single sharp nod. The 2 men peeled off without a word, taking positions near the elevators. Maya led Dante Marchesi down the hallway, acutely aware of his presence behind her. He moved silently despite his size, and she could feel his eyes on her back, assessing, calculating. What happened? His voice was quieter now, but no less controlled. "I was told his surgery went well, that he was recovering normally." He was. But sometimes, with heart surgery, complications arise. His left lung collapsed, which created pressure on his heart and caused it to stop beating. She heard his sharp intake of breath, heard the way his footsteps faltered for just a fraction of a second. But he's alive. It wasn't a question, but she heard the desperate need for confirmation underneath. "He's alive, doctor. Harrison and I were able to restart his heart and release the pressure on his lung. He's intubated right now, but his vitals are improving. We'll need to monitor him closely." But Maya stopped outside room 304, turned to face him. "Mr. Marchesi, your son is going to be okay." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite relief. This was a man who'd learned not to show vulnerability, but a softening around his eyes, a barely perceptible relaxation in his shoulders. "You saved him. You saved him." He took a step closer, and Maya had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Doctor, Harrison told security that if you hadn't recognized what was wrong, they would have lost him. That you brought him back." Word traveled fast, apparently. "I did my radiant job," Maya said quietly. "No." His eyes held hers. "You did more than that, and I don't forget debts." Before she could respond, he moved past her into the room. She followed, watching as this dangerous, powerful man approached his son's bedside with a gentleness that seemed impossible given everything else about him. Luca looked even smaller in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and tubes and monitors. His dark curls were matted with sweat, his face was pale, but his chest rose and fell with the ventilator's rhythm, and his heart beat steadily on the monitor. Dante reached out, brushed hair back from his son's forehead with a touch so careful it made Maya's throat tight. "Hey, Piccolo," he murmured. "Papa's here. You scared me, but you're okay now. You're going to be okay." Maya moved to check Luca's vitals, giving father and son as much privacy as the small room allowed. She adjusted medication drips, noted numbers on the monitors, tried not to notice the way Dante's hand trembled slightly as he held his son's small fingers. "How long will he need the breathing tube?" Dante asked without looking away from Luca. "Probably 24 to 48 hours, depending on how his lung heals. We'll do another chest x-ray in the morning to assess progress. And after that, full recovery?" Maya hesitated. She'd learned early in her career that honesty was better than false hope, even when the truth was hard. "Heart surgery is always serious, Mr. Marchesi, and this complication adds risk. But Luca is young, he's strong, and he's receiving excellent care. I can't make promises, but his chances are good." Dante finally looked at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes, fear, love, desperation, hit her like a physical blow. "He's all I have," he said quietly. "His mother died 3 years ago. Car accident. Since then, it's been just us. If I lost him..." He stopped, jaw clenching. "I can't lose him. You won't." Maya moved closer. "Professional distance be damned. I'll be here all night monitoring him. And tomorrow, the day shift nurse is incredible. Luca's going to have round-the-clock attention until he's well enough to go home. You'll be here, all night. It's my shift. I'm here until 7 a.m. Something in his expression shifted. "What's your full name?" The question caught her off guard. "Maya Chen." "Why?" "Because I need to know who saved my son's life." He pulled a card from his inside pocket, held it out to her. "My private number. If anything changes anything at all, you call me directly. Don't wait for official channels. Don't go through hospital administration. You call me." Maya took the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, just a name and a number. The kind of card that opened doors and ended conversations. "Mr. Marchesi, the hospital has protocols for family notification." "I don't care about protocols." His voice hardened. "My son stopped breathing tonight. I was asleep in my own bed, completely unaware, while he was dying. That doesn't happen again. You have questions about his care, concerns, anything, you call me." She should refuse. Should cite hospital policy and professional boundaries, and all the reasons why giving a Mafia boss her direct line to him was a terrible idea. But she looked at Luca, at this small boy fighting for every breath, and thought about how terrifying it must be for his father to feel powerless. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll call if anything changes." Dante nodded once, then turned back to his son. "Can I stay?" "Family is allowed in ICU 24 hours. You can pull up that chair." She left him there, sitting beside Luca's bed, holding his son's hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the world. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She checked on Luca every 30 minutes, sometimes more often when Dante was dozing and wouldn't notice her extra vigilance. His vitals remained stable. His oxygen saturation improved. By 6 a.m., Dr. Morrison, the attending physician, did rounds and declared that Luca was progressing better than expected. "Excellent catch on the pneumothorax. Nurse Chen." "Doctor," Morrison said, loud enough for Dante to hear. Most people would have missed it until it was too late. Maya deflected the praise, but she felt Dante's eyes on her, watching, assessing. At 7:15 a.m., she finished her charting and prepared to head home. She stopped by room 304 one last time to update the day, nurse, Sarah, on Luca's condition. Dante stood when she entered, and she realized he'd been awake all night. His suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, but his eyes were alert. "You're leaving. End of my shift. But Sarah here is excellent. She'll take great care of Luca." "When do you work next?" "Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. He studied her for a long moment. "Thank you, Maya Chen, for everything." The way he said her name, formal, careful, like he was committing it to memory, sent an inexplicable shiver down her spine. She left the hospital as dawn broke over Seattle, exhausted and emotionally wrung out. But as she drove home to her tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood that definitely wasn't Dante Marchesi's world, she couldn't stop thinking about those dark eyes, that carefully controlled desperation. The way he'd held his son like Luca was the only thing in the universe that mattered. She'd saved a child's life tonight. That should be enough. That should be everything. So why did she keep touching the business card in her pocket, feeling the weight of a debt she'd never asked for and a connection she definitely shouldn't want? Maya's apartment was exactly what you'd expect for a nurse drowning in student loans. 400 square feet of barely controlled chaos. A Murphy bed that didn't quite fold up properly. A kitchen that was really just a hot plate and a mini fridge. A bathroom where the shower head only worked if you hit it at exactly the right angle. She'd lived here for 2 years, ever since moving to Seattle, from Sacramento. It was supposed to be temporary, just until she paid down enough debt to afford something better. But temporary had a way of becoming permanent when you were barely scraping by. Maya dropped her bag by the door, peeled off her scrubs, and stood under the temperamental shower until the hot water ran out, which took approximately 4 minutes. She should sleep. She'd been awake for 23 hours straight, but her mind wouldn't stop replaying the night Luca's flatlined monitor, the compressions, Dante Marchesi's face when he'd said, "He's all I have." She made instant coffee because her actual coffee maker had broken 3 weeks ago, and she hadn't had time to replace it. Sat on her second-hand futon, pulled out her phone. 11 missed calls, all from the same number. Her stomach dropped. She hit voicemail, listened to her brother's increasingly frantic messages. "Maya, it's Danny. Mom's in the hospital. Call me back." "Maya, seriously, where are you?" "Mom, collapsed at work. They're running tests. It's bad, Maya. They think it's her heart. You need to come home." The phone slipped from her hand. Her mother, her strong, stubborn, work 3 jobs to put her kids through school mother. In the hospital with heart problems. Maya called Danny back with shaking fingers. He answered on the first ring. "Finally. Where the hell have you been?" "Working. I had my phone on silent during my shift." "What happened?" Danny's voice cracked. "She collapsed at the restaurant. Irregular heartbeat, chest pain, the whole thing. They admitted her to Sacramento General. They want to do an angiogram, maybe a stent. But Maya," he paused. "Insurance lapsed." Of course it did. Their mother, Maya Chen, had been working as a waitress and house cleaner since their father died 6 years ago. She'd let her health insurance lapse 8 months ago because she couldn't afford the premiums after Danny's college tuition came due. "How much?" Maya asked, though I've already knew the answer would be devastating. "For the procedure? 40,000. Maybe more if there are complications." Maya's entire savings account held $8,000. She'd been so proud of that number 8,000 saved over 3 years of brutal shifts and never eating out and wearing scrubs until they fell apart. 8,000. Not even a quarter of what they needed. "I'll figure it out," she heard herself say. "Tell Mom I'm coming home this weekend. Tell her everything's going to be okay." After she hung up, Maya sat in her silent apartment and tried not to cry. Tried not to think about how impossible this was. How she was already drowning in her own student loans. How her credit cards were maxed out. How there was no magical solution to needing $40,000 yesterday. She looked at Dante Marchesi's business card, still sitting on her counter. "I don't forget debts," he'd said. No, absolutely not. She wasn't going to ask a Mafia boss for money. That was insane. That was the kind of decision that destroyed lives. She threw the card in the trash, pulled it back out 10 minutes later, stared at it for an hour while her coffee went cold and the morning light crept across her floor. She wasn't going to call. She wasn't that desperate. She wasn't. Her phone buzzed. Text from Danny. "Mom's asking for you." She's scared. Maya looked at the card, at the embossed number, at the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. She grabbed her phone and dialed before she could change her mind. It rang once, twice. Maya Chen. Not a question. He'd programmed her number already. Of course he had. "Mr. Marchesi, Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard, tried again. "I need to ask you something. And you can say no. I won't. It won't affect Luca's care. I promise. But what do you need?" The gentleness in his voice, the absence of judgment or expectation, made her eyes sting with tears she'd been holding back since Danny's first message. "My mother needs surgery. Heart surgery. She doesn't have insurance. I don't have the money. And I know I have no right to ask. I know this is..." "How much?" 40,000. Maybe more. But I'll pay you back. Every penny. I'll work extra shifts. Maya." He said her name like a command, and she fell silent. "Where is she?" "Sacramento General. Give me 2 hours. The money will be there, and the best cardiac surgeon in California will be on his way." She couldn't breathe. "I can't. That's too much. I just needed..." "You saved my son's life," Dante said quietly. "Your mother will have the best care available. No debt. No repayment. This isn't a loan, Maya. This is what you're owed." "I'm not owed." "Yes, you are." His voice softened. "Let me do this. Please." Maya realized she was crying. Full, ugly sobs that she couldn't control. "Thank you," she managed. "Thank you so much. Get some sleep. Call your brother. Tell him it's handled." He hung up before she could respond. Maya sat on her futon, phone clutched in her hand, and tried to process what had just happened. A man she'd known for less than 12 hours had just saved her mother's life with one phone call. She should be relieved, should be grateful. Instead, she felt a creeping sense of dread settle into her bones. Because Dante Marchesi had said this wasn't a debt, but men like him didn't do anything without expecting something in return. She'd just made a deal with the devil. She just didn't know the price yet. Maya's next shift began with a summons to the hospital administrator's office. That was never a good sign. She'd barely clocked in, barely had time to drop her bag in her locker, when Patricia Valdez from HR appeared with that tight smile that meant someone was either getting promoted or fired. "Maya, do you have a moment? Dr. Reeves would like to speak with you." Dr. Bernard Reeves was the chief of medicine at Seattle Grace. Maya had seen him exactly twice in 3 years, once during new employee orientation, and once when he'd walked past her in the cafeteria. Men at his level didn't interact with floor nurses unless something had gone very, very wrong. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had she made a mistake with Luca's care? Had someone filed a complaint? Had the hospital found out about Dante Marchesi paying for her mother's surgery and decided it was a conflict of interest? She followed Patricia down the administrative corridor, her sneakers squeaking against polished tile that was noticeably cleaner than the floors in the patient wings. Everything here screamed budget allocation, the oil paintings on the walls, the leather furniture in the waiting area, the receptionist whose sole job seemed to be looking intimidating behind a mahogany desk. "Miss Chen," the receptionist said without warmth. "Go right in. Doctor." Reeves's office was exactly what she'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. A desk the size of her. The apartment's entire living space. Framed diplomas from Harvard covering one wall. The man himself sat behind that massive desk. 60-something with silver hair and the kind of tan that suggested frequent vacations to places Maya couldn't afford. He stood when she entered, which surprised her. "Nurse Chen, thank you for coming. Please, sit." Maya sat in one of the leather chairs across from him, her heart hammering. This was it. She was being fired. They'd found out about the money, about Dante Marchesi, about "I wanted to personally commend you, Doctor," Reeves said, "for your exceptional work 2 nights ago with the Marchesi boy." Maya blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The pneumothorax diagnosis. Quick thinking. Excellent clinical judgment. Dr. Harrison and Dr. Morrison both filed reports praising your performance." He smiled, and it looked genuine. "We're lucky to have nurses of your caliber on staff." "Thank you. I was just..." "Additionally," Dr. Reeves continued, leaning back in his chair, "the Marchesi family has made a very generous donation to the hospital. $5 million, to be exact, specifically designated for the pediatric cardiac unit." Maya's stomach dropped. $5 million. They've requested that a portion of those funds be used to create an endowed scholarship for nursing education, advanced pediatric training, critical care certifications, that sort of thing. His eyes found hers. "Mr. Marchesi specifically mentioned that you might be interested in pursuing additional certifications." Oh God, this was what Dante meant by not forgetting debts. He hadn't just paid for her mother's surgery. He'd donated $5 million to her hospital and created a scholarship with her name practically written on it. "That's incredibly generous," Maya managed, her mouth dry. "It is. Which brings me to the reason I asked you here. Doctor," Reeves pulled a folder from his desk. "The Marchesi family has made an unusual request. Young Luca will need home nursing care. During his recovery, someone to monitor his heart function, manage his medications, watch for complications. They've asked specifically for you." "For me?" "A 3-month private nursing position. Salary of $15,000 per month, plus benefits, plus housing on the estate. The family would cover all expenses, and the hospital would grant you a leave of absence." He slid the folder across the desk. "I'll be frank, Miss Chen. This hospital receives very little philanthropic support. The Marchesi donation could transform our pediatric cardiac program. It would mean updated equipment, additional staff, better outcomes for dozens of children every year. The unspoken message was crystal clear. Take this job, or you're jeopardizing funding that could save lives." Maya opened the folder with shaking hands. The contract was there, professionally drafted, specifying every detail. $15,000 a month, for 3 months. That was $45,000 more than she made in a year of her at the hospital. Enough to pay off a quarter of her student loans. Enough to actually save something. Enough to stop living one emergency away from financial disaster. I need to think about it, she said, even though she already knew she had no real choice. Of course, Mr. Marchesi's assistant indicated they'd need an answer by tomorrow. Doctor. Reeves stood, extending his hand. Whatever you decide, thank you again for your excellent care of young Luca. You're a credit to this hospital. Maya shook his hand, took the folder, and walked out of that office feeling like she'd just been bought. She made it through her shift on autopilot, checking vitals and distributing medications while her mind spun in circles. At 3 a.m., during her break, she finally called the number on Dante Marchesi's card. He answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. Maya. A scholarship? A $5 million donation? What are you doing? Ensuring my son gets the best care possible. His tone was matter of fact, like he handed out millions of dollars every day, which, she realized with sick certainty, he probably did. You're manipulating me. I'm offering you an opportunity. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Maya kept her voice low, aware of other nurses nearby. You made it so I can't say no without jeopardizing hospital funding, without looking like the villain who turned down helping a sick child. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, you could still say no. Could I? Really? Yes, he exhaled slowly. Maya, I'm not trying to trap you. I'm trying to do something good for my son and for you. Luca needs specialized care. You're the best person for that job. The donation to the hospital is separate, something I should have done years ago. The scholarship is because I respect your dedication to your profession. And if I say no to the job, then you say no. The donation stands. The scholarship stands. Your mother's surgery proceeds exactly as planned. Nothing changes except that I'll hire a different nurse and spend the next 3 months worrying that they won't care about Luca the way you do. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't manipulation, or if it was a more subtle kind. An appeal to the part of her that had become a nurse, specifically because she couldn't walk away from children who needed help. What would the job actually entail? She asked. Living on the estate, monitoring Luca's recovery, managing his medications, being available if complications arise. He paused. I travel frequently for business. When I'm gone, you'd be the only medical professional on site. I need someone I trust to keep him safe. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Mr. Marchesi, Dante. If you're going to be living in my home, we should use first names. The intimacy of that suggestion made her chest tighten. Dante, I don't know anything about your world. I'm not equipped to handle whatever comes with being part of your household. You're equipped to handle my son's medical needs. That's all I'm asking. Is it? Because men like you don't do anything without layers. I save your son's life. You pay for my mother's surgery. You donate millions to my hospital. You offer me a job I can't refuse. What's next? What's the endgame here? The silence stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. Then, the endgame is my son grows up healthy. Everything else is just logistics. I don't believe you. That's fair. She heard something in his voice, amusement. Maybe. Or respect. Believe this instead. I'm a dangerous man, Maya. I do dangerous things for dangerous reasons. But when it comes to Luca, I'm just a father who's terrified of losing the only family I have left. That's the truth. That's the only thing that matters. Maya closed her eyes, thought about Luca's small hand in his father's grip, about Dante's raw desperation when he'd said, "He's all I have." She thought about her mother in a hospital bed in Sacramento, about the surgery that was happening tomorrow, because Dante Marchesi had made one phone call. She thought about her student loans, her impossible rent, the way she'd been living for 3 years just surviving, never actually living. 3 months, she said. That's all. I'll help Luca recover, and then I come back to my regular life. 3 months, he agreed, starting when he's discharged. Probably a week from now. Okay. The word felt like stepping off a cliff. I'll do it. Thank you, Maya. The relief in his voice was palpable. You won't regret this. She already did, but she didn't say that. Just hung up and sat in the empty break room, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. Her mother's surgery went perfectly. Danny called from Sacramento while Maya was finishing her last shift at the hospital, his voice thick with tears of relief. The surgeon, Maya, this guy is incredible. He's done procedures on celebrities, politicians, everyone. He said Mom's heart is going to be better than it's been in years. How did you afford this? I took a job, Maya said, which was technically true. A private nursing position. It pays really well. You're a miracle worker, you know that? She wasn't. She was just a woman who'd made a deal with someone far more dangerous than her brother could imagine. But she let him believe in miracles because it was easier than the truth. A week later, on a gray Seattle morning that threatened rain but never quite delivered, Maya stood outside Seattle Grace Hospital with 2 suitcases containing everything she owned. A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Not an SUV like she'd expected, something sleeker, more subtle. The driver who emerged was older, maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen things most people couldn't imagine. Miss Chen, I'm Vincent Marcello, head of security for the Marchesi family. I'll be driving you to the estate. Security. Right, because of course Dante Marchesi had a head of security. Vincent loaded her bags into the trunk with efficiency that bordered on military precision, held the door open for her. She slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her entire car. They drove north, away from the city, into the hills where Seattle's old money built estates hidden behind gates and walls and carefully cultivated privacy. The neighborhoods changed from urban density to sprawling properties with views of the Puget Sound. How long have you worked for the Marchesis? Maya asked, partly out of curiosity, partly to break the uncomfortable silence. 23 years. Started with Dante's father, Antonio. Stayed after he passed. Vincent's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. You don't need to be nervous, Miss Chen. The family takes care of people who take care of them. I'm not nervous, she lied. His slight smile suggested he didn't believe her. The gates to the Marchesi estate appeared suddenly ornate iron, 12 feet tall, with cameras positioned every few feet. They swung open as the Mercedes approached, and Maya got her first glimpse of what would be home for the next 3 months. The main house was massive, 3 stories of stone and glass perched on a hillside overlooking the Sound. Carefully landscaped gardens surrounded it. All native plants and artful design. A separate structure, maybe a guest house, sat off to the left. And in the distance, she could see the water, gray and restless under the overcast sky. Jesus, she breathed. The estate has been in the Marchesi family for 4 generations, Vincent said, pulling up the circular drive. Dante's great-grandfather bought it in 1937, built most of it with his own hands, or so the story goes. The front door opened, before they'd fully stopped. A woman emerged, late 50s, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun and an expression that somehow managed to be both welcoming and assessing. Miss Chen, welcome. I'm Teresa Marcello, house manager and Vincent's wife. Let me show you to your rooms. Rooms, plural. Of course. Teresa led her through a foyer that belonged in a museum, marble floors, a chandelier that probably cost more than her student loans, art on the walls that might have been actual old masters, and up a curved staircase to the 2nd floor. The family quarters are in the east wing, Teresa explained. Your suite is in the west wing, adjacent to Luca's room. You'll have privacy, but you'll be close enough to respond quickly if he needs you. She opened a door, and Maya tried not to gasp. The suite was bigger than her entire apartment. A bedroom with a king-sized bed and windows overlooking the gardens. A sitting area with a couch and chairs and a flat-screen TV. A bathroom with a soaking tub and a shower that had approximately 17 different settings. And through a connecting door, a smaller room set up as a medical station, monitors, supplies, everything she'd need to care for Luca. This is too much, Maya said. Mr. Marchesi wanted you to be comfortable. Teresa's expression softened slightly. He's grateful for what you've done for Luca. This is his way of showing it. When does Luca come home? Tomorrow. Dante's bringing him home around noon. He asked if you could be here when they arrive, thought it might help Luca feel more comfortable. Of course. Teresa showed her the rest of the suite, explained mealtimes and household routines, and left Maya alone to unpack. She stood in that enormous bedroom, surrounded by luxury she'd never imagined living in, and felt profoundly out of place. This wasn't her world. These weren't her people. She was a nurse from Sacramento who'd grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment with a single mother and a leaky roof. What the hell was she doing here? Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Thank you for coming. Luca's excited to see you tomorrow. Dante. Maya stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. She should respond professionally, keep this formal and distant. Instead, she found herself typing, "Just doing my job." His response came immediately. "No, you're doing so much more than that." She didn't know how to respond to that, so she didn't. Just set her phone down and started unpacking her meager belongings into a closet that could have held a dozen wardrobes. Tomorrow, Luca would arrive. Tomorrow, this would all become real. Tomorrow, she'd start living in the home of one of the most dangerous men on the West Coast, taking care of his son, pretending she wasn't absolutely terrified of what she'd gotten herself into. But tonight she took a bath in that ridiculous tub, ate dinner that Teresa brought up on an actual silver tray, and lay in sheets with a thread count she didn't even know existed. Tomorrow would bring complications. Tonight brought something she hadn't felt in 3 years, the absence of immediate financial panic. The knowledge that, for 3 months at least, she didn't have to choose between groceries and electricity. Didn't have to pick up extra shifts until she collapsed from exhaustion. It felt like breathing after drowning, even if the price might be her soul. Luca came home at 12:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon that finally delivered on Seattle's threat of rain. Maya waited in the foyer, trying not to fidget with her scrubs, professional armor that felt necessary even though Teresa had assured her the household dress code was casual. Through the windows, she watched the black Mercedes pull up, watched Vincent open the rear door, watched Dante emerge first. He looked different in daylight, still dangerous, still imposing, but somehow more human. He wore jeans and a dark sweater instead of his usual suit, and his hair was slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. Then he reached back into the car, and Luca appeared. The boy looked small and fragile, moving carefully like his chest still hurt. He wore a dinosaur t-shirt and sweatpants, and his dark curls were longer than they'd been in the hospital, falling into his eyes. But he was smiling, tentative, but real. Maya's professional assessment kicked in automatically. Color good, breathing unlabored, gait steady but cautious, healing well. The door opened, and Luca's eyes found her immediately. "Maya!" His face lit up completely. He started toward her, then caught himself, looked up at his father. "Papa, can I?" "Carefully," Dante said, one hand resting protectively on Luca's shoulder. "Remember what the doctors said about taking it easy." But Luca was already crossing the foyer, and Maya met him halfway, dropping to her knees so they were eye level. He threw his arms around her neck, gentle, aware of his healing chest, and she held him, with the same careful tenderness. "Hi, sweetheart," she murmured. "Welcome home." "I missed you," he said into her shoulder. "Papa said you were going to stay with us. Is that true?" "For a while, yes. Just to make sure you heal up perfectly." He pulled back to look at her, those dark eyes so much like his father's studying her face. "Forever?" The question hit harder than it should have. "Not forever, but for as long as you need me. I'll always need you." Simple, certain, devastating. Maya felt Dante's presence before she looked up. He stood a few feet away, watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Gratitude, yes, but something else underneath, something that made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with Luca. "Let's get you settled in," she said to Luca, standing and taking his hand. "Want to show me your room? It's the best room." Luca's energy returned in a rush. "I have a telescope and everything. Papa got it so I could look at stars. But mostly I look at boats on the water." He led her toward the stairs, chattering about his room and his telescope and his collection of dinosaur figurines. Maya followed, acutely aware of Dante trailing behind them, silent but present. Luca's room was a child's paradise, massive, with windows overlooking the sound, built-in bookshelves filled with picture books and chapter books, a telescope mounted by the window, dinosaur posters on the walls, and a bed that looked like a race car. "Papa designed it," Luca said proudly. "After Mama died, he asked me what I wanted, and we built it together." The grief that flashed across Dante's face lasted only a second, but Maya saw it. Saw the way he touched the doorframe like he was steadying himself. Saw the love and loss written in every careful detail of this room. "It's wonderful," Maya said honestly. "But right now, I need to check your vitals, make sure everything's looking good after the drive home." She'd set up the medical equipment while they'd been talking portable monitors, blood pressure cuff, pulse oximeter. Luca submitted to the examination with the patience of a child who'd spent too much time in hospitals, answering her questions about pain levels and breathing difficulty with matter-of-fact precision. Everything looked good. Better than good, actually. His healing was remarkable. Perfect, Maya pronounced. But you still need to take it easy for another few weeks. No running, no jumping, nothing that makes your chest hurt. What about playing video games? She smiled. Video games are fine, within reason. Papa never lets me play more than an hour a day, Luca said, shooting his father an aggrieved look. Because screens rot your brain, Dante said, but his voice was gentle, teasing. And because you get too competitive and yell at the TV. I don't yell. I strategically express my opinions. Maya couldn't help laughing. Where did you learn that phrase? Papa uses it when people make him mad at work, Dante groaned. I'm raising a tiny lawyer. The domestic normalcy of it caught Maya off guard. This was the head of a crime family bantering with his 6-year-old about video games and bedtimes. It was surreal and humanizing, and made Dante Marchesi seem less like a dangerous criminal and more like just a dad. A dad who happened to run an empire built on things she probably shouldn't think about too carefully. Luca, why don't you rest for a bit? Dante suggested. Maya and I need to discuss your care schedule. But I'm not tired. Luca's yawn interrupted his protest. Rest, Dante repeated, firmer this time. Maya will be right down the hall if you need anything, Luca grumbled but climbed into his race car bed. Maya adjusted his pillows, pulled a light blanket over him, and found herself humming softly something her mother used to hum when she was sick as a child. Luca's eyes drifted closed. Within minutes, his breathing deepened into sleep. He trusts you, Dante said, quietly from the doorway. Completely. Maya followed him out into the hallway, pulling the door almost closed but leaving it cracked so she could hear if Luca called out. He's a good kid. He is. Dante's expression softened, but he's been through too much. His mother's death, the heart defect, the surgery, the complications. He's 6 years old. He should be worried about homework and whether his dinosaur toys are fighting or being friends. Instead, he's learned to rate his pain on a scale of 1 to 10 and describe his symptoms with medical precision. The grief in his voice was raw, unguarded. Maya found herself stepping closer without meaning to. He's resilient, she said. Kids are remarkably resilient when they have someone who loves them the way you love him. I wasn't there. The words came out harsh. When his mother died, I wasn't there. I was at a meeting, handling business that seemed important at the time. By the time I got to the hospital, she was already gone. And when Luca crashed the other night, when his heart stopped, I was asleep in my own bed while he was dying. I keep failing him. You're not failing him. You're human. I can't afford to be human, not in my world. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his dark eyes stole her breath. That's why you're here, Maya. Not just for medical care. You're here because when I'm not enough, when I fail, you'll be there. You'll keep him safe. The weight of that responsibility settled onto her shoulders. This wasn't just a nursing job. This was becoming the backup parent to a grieving child, whose father lived in constant fear of losing him. I'll do everything I can, she said quietly. But Dante, you need to know I'm not his mother. I can't replace what he lost. I'm not asking you to replace her. He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. I'm asking you to be someone he can count on. Someone who won't disappear. Someone who sees him as a child first and a patient second. I already do. I know. His hand came up, hesitated, then brushed a strand of hair away from her face. The gesture was so gentle, so unexpected, that Maya froze. That's why you're perfect for this. That's why I needed it to be you. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Maya stepped back, putting necessary distance between them. We should establish some boundaries, she said, her voice not quite steady. I'm here for Luca. Professional boundaries are important for his well-being and, you're right. Dante's expression shuddered, that careful control sliding back into place. I apologize. That was inappropriate. It's fine. We're establishing the parameters of our working relationship. Of course. He moved toward the stairs. I'll let you get settled. Dinner is at 6. Teresa will show you to the dining room. He was gone before she could respond, leaving her standing in the hallway feeling like she'd just navigated a minefield and wasn't sure if she'd made it across safely. She checked on Luca one more time, still sleeping peacefully, then retreated to her suite. This was fine. This was manageable. She was a professional. She could take care of a sick child without getting tangled up in complicated feelings for his devastatingly attractive, dangerously powerful father. She absolutely could. She just had to keep telling herself that until it became true. The first week passed in a blur of establishing routines. Maya took Luca's vitals 4 times a day, managed his medications, monitored his incision site for any signs of infection. They fell into an easy rhythm breakfast together at 8. Gentle activities throughout the morning, rest time after lunch, more play in the afternoon, dinner at 6. Dante was gone most days, disappearing to his office downtown or to meetings Maya didn't ask about. But every evening at 6, he returned for dinner. Every night at 8, he read Luca a bedtime story. And every morning, he stopped by Luca's room before leaving, kissing his son's forehead and exchanging a few quiet words. He was trying to be present, trying to be the father Luca needed. Maya watched their interactions and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Respect, admiration, and underneath it all, an attraction she absolutely could not acknowledge. On the 8th day, everything changed. Maya woke at 2:17 a.m. to alarms, screaming, not Luca's medical monitor's security alarms, blaring through the entire house. She was out of bed before her brain fully processed what was happening. Instinct driving her toward Luca's room. She burst through the connecting door to find him sitting up in bed, eyes wide with terror. Maya, it's okay. She was already moving, scooping him up, even though it made her back scream in protest. We're okay. Just stay with me. The door to the hallway slammed open. Vincent, weapon drawn, his face grim. Safe room. Now. What's happening? No time. Move. Maya ran. Luca clutched against her chest, following Vincent down a hallway she'd never noticed before. He pressed his palm against what looked like a regular panel in the wall. It swung open, revealing a steel door. The safe room beyond was small but sophisticated reinforced walls, monitors showing security camera feeds, supplies for an extended stay. Vincent pushed them inside. Lock it behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Dante. Code is 0617. Vincent, lock it. Now. The door closed. Maya punched in the code with shaking hands, heard the locks engage. Luca was crying silently against her shoulder. She sank down onto the couch against the far wall, holding him tight, one hand stroking his hair while her heart hammered. On the monitors, she could see chaos unfolding. Men in dark clothing scaling the estate walls, Vincent and other security personnel engaging them, gunfire, actual gunfire lighting up the night, and Dante moving through the grounds with lethal precision, weapon in hand, taking down intruders with brutal efficiency. Maya turned Luca's face into her shoulder. Don't look, baby. Just close your eyes and listen to my voice. You're safe. I've got you. She started humming that old lullaby, the one her mother used to sing. Luca's sobs gradually quieted, his small body trembling but calm enough that she knew he wasn't going into medical distress. The firefight seemed to last hours, but was probably less than 15 minutes. Finally, the monitors showed the intruders retreating, security sweeping the grounds, order being restored. A knock on the door made her jump. Maya, it's Dante. We're clear. She checked the monitors, confirmed it was him, and punched in the code. Dante stood in the doorway, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked shaken. Blood on his shirt, not his, she realized with relief. Gun still in his hand, but his eyes found Luca immediately, scanning. For injury? For trauma? Is he hurt? Physically, no, but Dante. He holstered the weapon and crossed to them in 3 strides, took Luca from her arms, held his son with a desperation that made Maya's eyes sting. You're okay, Dante murmured into Luca's hair. You're okay, Piccolo. Papa's got you. There were bad men, Luca whispered. Like the ones who hurt Mama. Dante's expression cracked. I know, but they can't hurt you. I won't let them. Never again. He looked at Maya over Luca's head, and the gratitude and guilt in his eyes were overwhelming. Thank you, he mouthed. She nodded, not trusting her voice. When Luca finally fell back asleep, exhausted from adrenaline and fear, Dante carried him back to his room. Maya followed, checking vitals out of habit even though she knew they'd be elevated from stress. He's okay, she said quietly. Heart rate's high, but that's normal given the circumstances. No signs of medical distress. I'm moving you both. Dante's voice was flat, controlled. There's a safe house outside the city. More secure. You'll stay there until I eliminate the threat. Who were they? Russians. The Volkov organization has been moving into Seattle for the past year. trying to take territory. His jaw clenched. They targeted my home, my son. That was a mistake they won't get to repeat. The cold fury in his voice sent chills down her spine. This was Dante Marchesi, the crime boss, not Dante Marchesi, the worried father. This was the man people feared. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. Vincent will drive you. 3 guards will stay with you at all times. And you? I have work to do. He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something that terrified her, not rage, but calculation. The look of a man preparing for war. The Volkovs made this personal. I'm going to remind them why that was a mistake. Maya should have been scared. Should have demanded he take her and Luca somewhere far away. Should have walked away from this entire situation. Instead, she heard herself say, "How long will you be gone? However long it takes." He touched her face, so briefly she might have imagined it. "Keep him safe, Maya. That's all I ask." Always. He left, and Maya was alone with a sleeping child and the certain knowledge that the next time she saw Dante Marchesi, blood would have been spilled. And the terrifying part was that she wasn't sure she cared, as long as he came back alive. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The safe house was a fortress disguised as a lakeside cabin, 40 minutes outside Seattle, surrounded by dense forest, with sightlines cleared for 200 yards in every direction. Vincent drove them there at dawn, while mist still clung to the ground and Luca dozed fitfully in the back seat. Maya watched the city disappear behind them and wondered if she'd ever see that world again. Wondered if Dante would survive whatever war he was walking into. The cabin itself was deceptively rustic, log exterior, stone fireplace, wide windows overlooking the lake. But Maya noticed the reinforced door frames, the security cameras hidden in the eaves, the panic room accessible from 3 different locations, 3 guards on rotation, Vincent explained, carrying their bags inside. Marco, James, and Sophia. One of them will be awake and monitoring security at all times. You need anything, you ask. You see anything suspicious, you hit this. He handed her a small panic button on a chain. Wear it always. How long will we be here? Vincent's expression was grim. Until Dante says it's safe. Could be days, could be weeks. And if something happens to him, then I come for you and Luca, and we disappear. New identities, new lives, whatever it takes. He met her eyes. Dante made me promise. No matter what happens, his son survives. The weight of that promise hung between them. Maya nodded, unable to speak around the fear closing her throat. Vincent left. Guards took up positions, and Maya was alone with Luca in a beautiful prison, waiting for news she was terrified to receive. The days blended together. Maya maintained Luca's medical routine, checked vitals, managed medications. They played board games and read books. She taught him to skip stones on the lake while Sophia watched from the porch, hand never far from her weapon. Luca never asked when his father was coming home, like he already knew the answer would be, when it's safe, and safe was a concept that meant nothing in their world. On the 5th night, Maya's phone rang. Dante's number. She answered before the second ring. Are you both safe? His voice was hoarse, exhausted. We're fine. Luca's asleep. His vitals are perfect. She paused. Are you okay? I'm alive. A bitter laugh. The Volkovs are no longer a concern. She didn't ask what that meant. Didn't want to know the details of what he'd done, how many people had died to ensure his son's safety. When can we come home? 2 more days. I'm ensuring there are no remaining threats, no retaliation risks. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Maya. You didn't sign up for this. I signed up to take care of Luca. That's what I'm doing. You did more than that. You protected him when I couldn't. You kept him calm during the attack. His voice cracked slightly. You're everything I hoped you'd be. Something in Maya's chest tightened. Dante, I need to go. Vincent will bring you home day after tomorrow. And Maya? His voice dropped lower. Thank you. For everything. He hung up before she could respond. Maya stood in the darkened cabin, phone pressed to her chest, and acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. She was falling for Dante Marchesi, not despite the danger, but because of everything. He was the father who'd burn the world for his son, the man who carried impossible burdens with unshakable strength, the person who saw her not as a nurse or an employee but as someone essential. It was insane. It was impossible. It violated every professional boundary she'd ever learned. But it was true. 2 days later, Vincent drove them home. The estate looked the same: pristine grounds, imposing house, peaceful water view. But Maya noticed new security cameras, additional guards, a tension in the air that suggested the world had changed while they were away. Dante met them at the door. He looked thinner, harder, like he'd shed some essential softness during those days away. But when Luca ran to him, his face transformed: pure relief, pure love. "Papa!" Luca crashed into his father's arms. "I missed you." "I missed you too, Piccolo." Dante lifted him easily, despite Luca's doctor's orders about taking it easy. So much. Every single second. His eyes found Maya over Luca's shoulder. The look he gave her was complicated gratitude, regret, something darker and more intense, and that made her breath catch. That night, after Luca was asleep and the house had settled into quiet, Maya found Dante in his study. She hadn't meant to seek him out, had planned to maintain distance, preserve boundaries. But her feet carried her down the hallway, past closed doors and silent guards, until she stood outside his study, watching him through the cracked door. He sat at his desk, head in his hands, shoulders bowed under invisible weight. For the first time since she'd met him, Dante Marchesi looked defeated. Maya knocked softly. "Can I come in?" He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "You should be resting." "I can't sleep." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Are you okay?" "Define okay." He gestured to the glass of amber liquid on his desk. "I'm alive. My son is safe. I've eliminated every immediate threat to my family. By most measures, I'm doing exceptionally well. But you're not." "No." Simple, honest. "I'm not." Maya crossed to him. All. Professional distance abandoned. Sat on the edge of his desk, close enough to touch. "What happened out there? Things I'll never tell you about. Things I did to ensure Luca can grow up without fear." His eyes met hers, dark and haunted. "I'm not a good man, Maya. You need to understand that. The things I've done, you protected your son. I killed people. Blunt, brutal. Not in self-defense. Not in the heat of battle. I hunted down everyone connected to that attack, and I eliminated them systematically. Men who had families, who probably thought they were just following orders." He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "You should be afraid of me." "I'm not." "Then you're a fool." "Maybe." Maya slid off the desk, closed the distance he'd created. "Or maybe I see what you are: a father doing impossible things in an impossible situation. You think you're the only one who's morally compromised? I took money from you. I took this job knowing what you are. I've spent weeks being in your home, taking care of your son, becoming part of your life. If you're damned, Dante, then so am I. That's not—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly." She reached up, touched his face, felt him freeze under her hand. "I understand that you terrify me and intrigue me in equal measure. That Luca has wrapped himself around my heart and I can't imagine leaving him. That every professional boundary I'm supposed to maintain has evaporated and I don't care anymore. Maya." Her name was a warning, a plea. "Tell me to leave," she whispered. "Tell me this is inappropriate, that I'm fired, that I need to go back to my room and forget this conversation. Tell me, and I will." He stared at her for an endless moment. Then his hand came up, covered hers where it rested against his face. "I can't," he said roughly. "God help me, I can't." When he kissed her, it was nothing like she'd imagined. Not gentle or tentative, but desperate, like she was air and he'd been drowning. His hands framed her face, tilted her head back, and he kissed her like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Maya kissed him back with equal desperation. Months of tension and attraction finally released. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, needing more contact, more connection, more everything. They broke apart, gasping. Dante rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. "This is insane," he muttered. "Completely. You work for me. You're here for Luca." "I know. I'm dangerous. My world is dangerous. Being with me puts you at risk. I'm already at risk." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I was at risk the moment I walked into Luca's hospital room. The moment I agreed to this job. The moment I started caring about both of you more than I should. You should leave. Go back to your normal life, your safe world, your—" "No." "Maya." I said no, Dante. Stop trying to protect me from choices I'm making with full knowledge. Stop trying to be noble when we both know it's too late for that." She cupped his face in both hands, made him look at her. I'm here. I'm staying. And unless you genuinely don't want me, unless this was a mistake. He kissed her again, cutting off her words. This kiss was different, slower, deeper, a promise rather than a question. When they finally separated, his eyes held something Maya had never seen before. Hope. 3 months, he said quietly. Your contract is for 3 months. Then you're free to walk away. No obligations, no guilt. And if I don't want to walk away, then we figure it out. His thumb brushed across her lower lip. Together. Together, she agreed. They stood in his study, wrapped in each other. And Maya knew she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. She'd become entangled with a dangerous man in a dangerous world, and there was no going back to the person she'd been before. But as Dante held her, as she felt his heartbeat against hers, she discovered she didn't want to go back. She only wanted to move forward into whatever complicated, messy, beautiful future they might build together. The next morning arrived too soon and too gently. Sunlight filtered through curtains. Maya didn't remember closing. She woke in her own bed, alone, wondering if the night before had been a dream. Then she saw the note on her nightstand, in bold, decisive handwriting. Had to leave early. Breakfast with Luca at 8? Real. It had been real. Maya showered, dressed, and found Luca already at the kitchen table, working his way through pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Teresa must have made them. The woman had a gift for anticipating what would make the child smile. Maya. Luca's face lit up. Papa said you'd have breakfast with me. He had to go to work, but he'll be back for dinner. Then it's just you and me today. She sat beside him, accepted coffee from Teresa with a grateful nod. What should we do? Can we go to the beach? The private one? His eyes were hopeful. Papa says my chest is strong enough now for short walks. Let me check with your father first, and we'll need Sophia to come with us. They did go to the beach, a stretch of rocky shore on the estate's northern edge, accessible only through the property. Sophia maintained a discreet distance while Maya and Luca explored tide pools, discovered tiny crabs, collected smooth stones. Luca was breathless with joy, his laughter echoing across the water, and Maya watched him, this resilient little boy who'd survived so much, and felt her heart expand impossibly further. This was why she'd become a nurse, not for the paycheck or the prestige, but for moments like this, watching a child heal, seeing life return to eyes that had known too much pain. Maya? Luca tugged her hand. Can I ask you something? Anything, sweetheart. Are you going to leave when I get better? His voice was small, uncertain. Papa said you're here for 3 months. That's almost over. Maya knelt in the sand, brought herself eye level with him. Would it bother you if I left? Yes. His eyes filled with tears he was trying hard not to shed. You're like... He struggled for words. You make Papa smile. And you make me feel safe, like Mama used to. Oh, this beautiful, perceptive child. Luca, listen to me. She took his small hands in hers. I don't know what's going to happen when 3 months are up, but I know I care about you very much, and I care about your papa. And if you want me to stay, if your papa wants me to stay, then we'll figure out how to make that work, okay? Promise? She shouldn't promise. Shouldn't make commitments she might not be able to keep. But looking into those hopeful eyes, she couldn't bring herself to hedge. Promise. He hugged her tight, and Maya closed her eyes, breathing in sea salt and sunshine and the particular sweetness of a child's trust. When they returned to the house, Dante, he was home early. He stood on the terrace, phone pressed to his ear, but his eyes tracked them the entire walk from the beach. When he ended his call, he came down to meet them. How was the beach? We found 17 crabs, Luca announced, and Maya promised she won't leave. Dante's eyes snapped to hers, questioning. She offered a small shrug, a helpless smile. What else could I say? Did she now? Dante's voice was carefully neutral, but she saw relief in his expression. That's good, because I was hoping we could all have dinner together tonight, as a family. The word hung in the air. Family. They weren't a family. They were a nurse, a patient, and the patient's father who'd crossed inappropriate professional lines. They were temporary, complicated, built on foundations that couldn't possibly hold. But Luca's face was radiant. Really? Like a real family dinner? Really, Dante confirmed, eyes still on Maya. If that's okay with Maya. It's okay with me, she said softly. That They sat together at the dining room table. Not the formal one used for business, but the smaller one in the breakfast nook, where the chandelier was replaced by simple pendant lights and the atmosphere was warm instead of imposing. Teresa served pasta carbonara and fresh bread and a salad from the estate gardens. They ate and talked and laughed. Luca told elaborate stories about the crab's secret civilization. Dante shared a carefully edited version of his day. Maya described her mother's recovery, how Jean was doing physical therapy and getting stronger every day thanks to the surgery Dante had made possible. It was domestic and ordinary and absolutely perfect. After Luca went to bed, Maya and Dante stood on the terrace, watching stars reflect on the dark water. "He asked you to stay," Dante said quietly. "He did. What did you tell him?" "That if you wanted me to stay, we'd figure it out." She turned to face him. "Do you want me to stay?" "More than I should." He pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "But Maya, you need to understand what that means. If you stay, if we do this, you're part of my world. The danger, the security, the reality that I'll always have enemies who might try to hurt the people I love." "I know. Do you? Really?" He pulled back to look at her. "I can protect you. I can surround you with security and eliminate threats, and do everything in my power to keep you safe. But I can never guarantee your safety completely, and I need you to accept that before we go any further." Maya thought about her old life, the tiny apartment, the crushing debt, the exhaustion, the constant stress. She thought about her mother's surgery, about Luca's smile, about the way Dante looked at her like she was something precious. "Nothing in life is guaranteed," she said finally. "I could go back to being a hospital nurse and get hit by a bus tomorrow. At least here, I'd be living fully. I'd be doing work that matters with people I care about. That's worth the risk." "You're sure?" "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but I'm sure." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Maya kissed him back, committing fully to this impossible choice, this dangerous man, this new life that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Epilogue. 6 months later, Maya adjusted Luca's bow tie for the third time, ignoring his dramatic sighs. "It's too tight, Maya." "It's perfect. You look very handsome." "I look like I'm being strangled by fancy string." She laughed, kissed the top of his head. "Come on, Papa's waiting." They walked down the grand staircase together, Luca in his small tuxedo, Maya in a simple blue dress that Dante had insisted on buying her despite her protests about the cost. Dante waited at the bottom, devastatingly handsome in his own tuxedo. His eyes heated when he saw her, that now familiar look that still made her pulse quicken. "Beautiful," he murmured, offering his arm. "You're not so bad yourself," she teased. The hospital gala was everything Maya had expected. Elegant, expensive, filled with Seattle's elite, all writing checks to support Seattle Grace's pediatric cardiac program. The program that Dante's donation had transformed, that now saved dozens of lives every year. Dr. Reeves gave a speech, praising the Marchesi family's generosity. Luca fidgeted in his seat but beamed when people applauded his father. And Maya sat between her two favorite people in the world, holding Dante's hand under the table, feeling Luca lean against her shoulder, and thought about how impossible this all had seemed 6 months ago. Her mother was healthy, living in Seattle now, working part-time at a restaurant she actually enjoyed. Maya had paid off half her student loans with her salary from those first 3 months, and now worked as Luca's full-time private nurse, a job that was less about medical care and more about being the stability a grieving child needed. She and Dante had. He's been careful, discreet. To the outside world, she was just the nurse, but inside the estate, inside the family they were building, she was so much more. "I have something for you," Dante murmured during dessert. He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Maya's heart stopped. "Dante, it's not what you think. Open it." Inside was a key. Simple, brass, with the Marchesi family crest engraved on the head. "What? A key to the estate," he explained quietly. "Your room is in the west wing. This opens the main house, the gates, everything. You can come and go as you please. No restrictions, no obligations." His eyes held hers. "You're not staff, Maya. You're family. This makes it official." Tears pricked her eyes. She looked at Luca, who was grinning like he'd been in on the secret, looked at Dante, whose expression was open and vulnerable in a way it rarely was in public. "Thank you," she whispered. Later, after the gala, after Luca fell asleep in the car and they carried him up, into his room. After they'd changed out of formal wear and stood on their terrace, watching the moon on the water, Dante pulled Maya close. "I love you," he said simply. "I probably shouldn't. It's too fast, too complicated, too many reasons why this shouldn't work. But I love you anyway." Maya's breath caught. "I love you too. Both of you. Stay with us. Not for 3 months, not for a year. Just stay." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes." He kissed her as the stars wheeled overhead and the water whispered against the shore. And Maya Chen, former nurse, current guardian, forever part of this impossible family, kissed him back and chose this beautiful, dangerous, perfect life. Because sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. Sometimes salvation arrived in the form of a flat-lined monitor and a pair of desperate dark eyes. Sometimes love bloomed in the space between danger and devotion. And sometimes, a simple nurse from Sacramento found her home, in the arms of a complicated man and his beautiful son, building a family from broken pieces, and choosing to stay even when staying meant risking everything. Maya had made her choice, and she'd never been more certain of anything in her life. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel.